Halloween was my favorite holiday. It wasn't the parties, nor the candy, nor the costumes, but the cool fall air matched with the sounds of children and adults alike bustling about the neighborhood, running from house to house invigorated by the mystery of what candy lay ahead, and whether the man in the rocking chair on the porch was a mannequin or a well-placed homeowner waiting to scare his next victim. So lively, so unusual. The atmosphere of Halloween, it never did get old to me. On this particular Halloween, I wasn't in costume, nor was I chauffeuring my own children, nor attending a party or even handing out candy. I was simply a jogger, running along a dirt path that ran in the middle of the road through the neighborhood I used to live in Tennessee. I used to love jogging along this path, breathing in the crisp fall air under the cover of night when the world was quiet, calm, and relaxing after a hard day's work. As I had stated before, this was only enhanced by the atmosphere that Halloween brought with it. Every few hundred feet, I had to stop and let a platoon of children pass in front of me as they tried to spook me and urged me to guess what they were dressed as for Halloween. There was only one part of this jog that I dreaded this night. There was about a half-mile of this run on a path that I would run through some nearby woods while cutting back into the neighborhood. Sure, I could have avoided this, but it was habit to run this entire loop, so I brushed off the anxiety and continued into this portion. As I went further into the woods, the sounds of children faded into the background, and the path, while smooth terrain, was engulfed by darkness, adding a layer of danger that was generally not present. As I meandered into the woods, I expected something bad to happen. Would an individual concealed by a mask jump into the path and give chase? Would I come across a costumed individual or two standing quietly in the path, seemingly waiting for me, but saying nothing? What if the mythos of Halloween came true? What if the barrier between living and dead was truly thinner on this night, and I came across someone departed long ago? The darkness might have physically consumed the path, but my mind was consumed by tall tales of the figurative darkness that Halloween brings with it. For that half-mile, my mind went wild, but sure enough, I ran through the forest and back into the neighborhood without a hitch. As I exited the woods, I laughed at myself for even considering danger and continued on my way. Leaving the forest, though, I realized that the world seemed a bit quieter than before. The street I was entering was covered by a thin mist. Keep in mind, this wasn't a mist that I could see through, but just enough that it was puzzling and new. I brushed this off as a low-hanging cloud passing by. I was running near a river, and after all, mist is fairly common in the evenings due to the temperature gradients. As I entered the mist, though, I stopped. Surrounding the mist, in front of almost every house, there was an orange glow, almost like fire. Initially, I hesitated to continue running, and I was extremely confused. I approached one of the houses experiencing this glow, and I realized as I drew nearer that yes, in fact, these houses were aglow with fire, but not necessarily on fire. Jack-o'-lanterns encompassed the walkways leading up to the homes' front doors, which were opulently decorated for the holiday now. I checked multiple homes within this mist, and I noticed that every single dwelling had these jack-o'-lanterns and opulent decorations. At one of the homes, the bucket of candy at the front was genuinely overflowing with candy, to the point that candy was lying on the ground at the side of it, as if somebody had hurriedly dumped candy into the bowl. There was a sign saying, "Happy Halloween. Please take one." I obliged, and I took a single Kit Kat bar. I figured, while I wasn't a trick-or-treater, with that much candy around, nobody would be missing out. Had it been like this before I entered the woods? I couldn't quite recall. I certainly hadn't previously noted the strong orange glow of fire on a single house. I also noticed that the abundance of trick-or-treating youngsters that I'd noticed outside of the mist were absent within it. This was all very strange to me. I made my way back to the path, adjusting my watch and preparing to start my run again, when I heard something sifting through the gravel behind me. It was apparent that the sound was coming from the small footfalls of a child. Turning around, a small boy, maybe 3 or 3.5 feet tall, with a simple white sheet and eye holes over him, slowly crept up to me. "Trick or treat, sir," he stated, holding out a small brown bag open in front of me. I figured on my run the candy would melt either way. Plus, I was running. Did I really need the calories? I put the Kit Kat in his bag and said, "Happy Halloween, bud." He thanked me and turned around, walking off on his way. I finished adjusting my watch at this point and started to continue on my run, passing through and out of the mist finally. It wasn't necessarily abrupt, but as I passed out of the mist, I gradually noticed that the orange glow started to subside, and the streets next to me became more and more filled with costumed children, happily running for their next trick or treat. I turned around to look behind me, and I saw that the glow was also absent there. I was puzzled, and I walked backwards to investigate this. I eventually walked up to the house that I got my Kit Kat from, and I noted that a bowl of candy was there, just as before, except instead of running over, it was empty and on its side, obviously thieved by greedy children. There was also a stark absence of jack-o'-lanterns at all of the homes, except for one pumpkin at the door of the house which had all of the candy, which had obviously been smashed into a pile of mush at the base of the door. I was ashamed to be part of the same species as the people that took it upon themselves to do this. Again, I made my way back to the road when behind me from the woods I heard a holler and 3 older kids ran out clutching their hands. "Did you see that? Did you see that?" one of them yelled to the others. "What on earth was that?" the others said. Annoyed at the gap in my run at this point, I walked up to them. "I assume you're the ones who lifted all that candy, aren't you?" I demanded. "What candy?" the tallest one exclaimed. "Are you blunt? The candy in the bowl at that door," I exclaimed. "Yeah, we took a few pieces, but we don't have it anymore. We were eating our candy in the woods when a kid dressed as a ghost walked up to us out of nowhere and held up his bag, so I took it from him, and I told him to get lost, but when we started walking away, more kids dressed up the exact same way came walking down that path ahead of us. Turning around, there were now 4 or 5 of them where we left that one. One of them reached in their bag and pulled out something sharp. We dropped all of our candy at that point and we took off. I didn't want to stick around and see what these kids had next." "Likely," I said. The kids wandered off, obviously shaken and shaking their heads, but I just chuckled at the idea of some goofy teenagers getting scared by a couple of young kids. I decided to see for myself what they were on about in the woods though, and maybe, if anything was left behind, grab a piece of candy for myself. As I entered the woods, I noted that the mist had traveled into the woods and was hovering there, but I didn't think much of it. Approaching the center of the path though, I noticed something odd. Where the children claimed they had been ambushed by the young kids in ghost costumes, there was a lit, well-carved jack-o'-lantern lying in the middle of the path, facing towards me, smiling, with some chocolate at its base. Approaching it, I noticed one more thing under the orange glow, coming from the innards of the squash though, a small toothpick sign on the side of it, saying, "Happy Halloween, please take one." I took a good look around me, took one more Kit Kat, and hesitantly went on my way.